I'm Tamara Pietzke, and at the time that my story began, I had been a therapist at MultiCare Hospital in Washington State for about 5 years. In March of 2023, I had a client come in and say that they identified as a wounded male dog. A female client came in and said that they identified as a wounded male dog. And I did not know what to do with that information. Like, I had heard people come in before and say, like, I feel like I'm actually transgender. And I just had kind of treated them the way I treated any other client, right? We just did therapy on all the different things in their life that were causing them distress. I never felt like I had to have an opinion because I just trusted that people who were working in these gender clinics knew what they were doing. So I felt like, okay, that's whatever, we'll just continue. I'll do what I know how to do. We'll treat anxiety, depression, other issues that are happening in your life. But at this point, when this client came in and said that, I was like, okay, so at what point is someone's identity actually a mental health illness? Like, at what point do we need to press pause and deal with this as if something's going on that needs some medical or some mental health attention? And so I emailed my boss, I emailed my colleagues, and I said, hey, I had a client come in and say that they identified as a wounded male dog, and I don't really know what to do with this. Like, at what point is someone's identity something that we treat as a mental health diagnosis? And they said there's no time that would happen. Like, if this client is not saying that this identity is causing them any distress, then it's fine. Like, you just basically say, awesome, I'm glad you know who you are, and you continue to be a therapist. And my boss was on this email too, and I was like, I don't know how to process this, so I kind of just like set it off to the side and kept kind of like thinking this stuff through, like, what is going on here with gender identity and the way that we are treating these people and these young children who are just trying to figure out who they are? Like, what is happening here? And then September of 2023, we had a mandatory gender-affirming care training. None of our trainings up until this point had been mandatory. And I know I'm gonna sound so naive, but I had never heard gender-affirming care, those three words together before. And so I was like, what is this? And I just like, had a bad feeling that, because since it was this mandatory training, that we were going to go in and be like indoctrinated and threatened basically with our, have our jobs threatened. And so it was like the training was supposed to happen after Labor Day weekend. And so I spent every night that weekend, after I put my kids to bed, I sat in bed and I just like researched everything I could about gender affirming care. And I realized like it wasn't that easy to do. Like, I would Google like, what are the dangers of gender affirming care? And the results would be like, how to be a good friend to your LGBTQ. And I was like, what is happening? Like, I came into this situation so naive. Like, I truly had no idea. I was like processing it all. And any article that I found or any like organization that I found that was like, we're hurting people. I had written a letter saying that I would not go to this training. And so I wrote this letter and I said to all the people that I found who were giving a voice to the fact that we're hurting children, I said, please read this for me. Tell me that I'm not wrong because I might lose my job over this. And so I sent it to literally strangers on the internet. And I was like, please tell me that this is the information that I'm putting together here is not wrong. And I got emails back and said, you're not wrong, you're absolutely right, but you have to go to this training because if you don't, you're gonna render yourself irrelevant. They're just gonna fire you and then you lose your influence, so you have to go. And so then we talked through some questions that I could potentially ask. Questions, I don't know if you can tell, I am not controversial. I do not wanna make anybody feel like I'm attacking them. So I went into this meeting and I can tell you with certainty that I was like so gentle and so like cautious with like the way I was presenting these questions, but there were 122 of my colleagues there. And when the opportunity presented itself, I said things like, hey, if countries in Europe are like pressing pause on this, why are we mandating this of our clinicians now? And everybody, like, it was a virtual training and the chat box blew up and they were like, you are doing harm to our patients, keep politics out of this. And like, again, I'm so stupid. I was like, politics? Like, I didn't say anything about the president. Like, I don't understand what you're talking about. And so I just like could not believe the hostility. The person that was doing the training was like, I want you to understand, like, we are not gonna, no more of these questions from you. Like, this is not up for debate. And so I left that training and my boss called me and she was like, that was not the correct time or place to ask those questions. Like, oh, okay, I thought that like they had said that we could ask questions, so I just assumed. And so then after that, I just kept like emailing my boss, emailing the person who I did the training, and I asked them these questions in email so I could keep a record of things that they were saying. And I just wanted to make sure that like am I crazy here? Like, what is happening? And they just kept saying the same response over and over again, no matter what I asked. At no point did anyone say like, okay, hey, let's look at this. What are you seeing online? Let's like look at this research together and figure out whether or not there's anything here that we should like reevaluate. And I just thought that they would. Like, we're here to help people. Like, why would that not be a conversation that they would want to engage in? Instead, they just like decide that I'm a monster. And so they basically just said over and over again, I want you to understand we are not going to agree on this issue. Like, this is best practice. MultiCare will not tolerate anything less. And there is no reason why a person's mental health would impact their identity. Like, it doesn't matter if they've had a history of trauma. It doesn't matter if there's co-occurring disorders. It doesn't matter because they know who they are and you're not allowed to question that at all. And so, again, I didn't really know what to do with that. And then I had a client come in, a 13-year-old who was a female who was mostly nonverbal. When we would talk, she would just like continue to scroll on her phone and like rock back and forth. And I kept trying to engage her and it was very challenging. She had a history of trauma, really intense trauma. And shortly after I started seeing her, I saw that she had a gender clinic appointment coming up, her first one, and I asked her how she felt about that. And she said she didn't know she had one. And then she kept scrolling on her phone and we talked about something else. And then after that initial appointment, I read the note and it said, ask your therapist for a letter to start testosterone. And I could tell it was a form letter because I later went back and was like, okay, yeah, they're all the same. But it said that she so eloquently said how distressed she was in her body as a female, which I'm like, there's no way. Like, she doesn't talk. That's not a thing that happens. And so then her dad asked me to write a letter to start testosterone. And so I was like, finally, now people will actually listen to me. Like, this is obviously not a good candidate. This is a child who's got so much else going on. And so I emailed my boss and I emailed the person who did the training and I said, hey, can we look at this client's chart together? Like, they want me to write this letter for this young child to begin testosterone, and I just feel like there's so many reasons why that's not a good idea. And then I don't think I even got a response back, but my boss came into my office a few days later and was like, I want you to know this has gone above me. Like, the person who did the training has reported you to risk management. And again, I am so dumb. I was like, finally, like, risk management, and I can have this conversation together. Like, we can look at how we're hurting this client and realize that, like, we are hurting people. And so I met with risk management numerous times. They ultimately determined that I was the risk. They took the child from me, said I was incompetent to work with, gender distressed young people, and just gave the client to somebody who would just automatically write that letter, no questions asked. And shortly thereafter, I left MultiCare. I was like, I can't work for an organization that I don't respect, and I went someplace else. And 3 weeks after starting that new job, my article in the Free Press came out, that new job. They called me up at 7 o'clock that night, and were like, you're just not the right fit for this position. Lost my job, single mom of 3 little kids. I was like, this is like a nightmare situation. I'm so grateful for the Courage Coalition because I don't know what I would have done had there not been support in place. But I ended up opening my own practice. At the time that I was opening my own practice, I got letters from the state saying I was being investigated for not being gender-affirming and for suggesting that gender dysphoria is a mental illness. And so that's where we are today.